Hi, everyone. Welcome to Talks at Google, and I'm your host, Somya. Today, I'm going to be sitting with a makeup artist and a wellness entrepreneur, Bobbi Brown. Bobbi will talk about her beauty philosophy and the path that led her till there. Please join me in welcoming a beauty industry titan, a well renowned makeup artist, a best selling author, and a serial entrepreneur, Bobbi.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, Bobby. I have to say, I'm beyond excited and super honored to be hosting you at Google today. Thank you for making the time to join us.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
Bobby, I know you've made a life out of the beauty industry. Can you tell me where it really started?
I've always loved beauty, and I used to watch my mother put her makeup on, and I was always in awe how just a little bit made her look so much more glamorous. And when it was time for me to go to college, I had no clue what I wanted to do, and my mother helped me figure out that I had this passion for makeup. And I went to Emerson College and I studied theatrical makeup. No, they didn't have a program. I was able to create my own. Now I know that's called being an entrepreneur. Honestly, that's really where I started. And then I started just figuring things out right after college.
And how did the makeup even start? So what was it about makeup that you enjoyed?
Well, I just love the way it transformed you. And I even knew when I played with my mom's makeup and used it, I instantly felt prettier. I felt better. And then I would make up my friends. I made up my dog, even my doll. When I went to college and I was able to use makeup to create characters for the theater, for television, I just fell in love with everything from the textures to what I actually saw happen and how I was able to help the actors transform into the character. And then when I
Yeah.
started doing it in the beauty world, I saw a similar thing, transforming people, and that's something I was always interested in.
So, Bobby, when you started with makeup, it was the 80s, and the trend was the bright makeup, the bright lipstick, and you came up with the natural makeup, the no makeup at a time when people didn't know who you were. How did that feel? Like breaking the trend, going against the trend?
Well, I never tried to be a rule breaker, and it's almost like I was the opposite. Here were all these rules of contouring and multicolor and foundation to change the color of your skin, and I just could never make anyone look pretty. And I just realized that the girls were so pretty without all that makeup on. I would use makeup just to enhance and to look suntan, and slowly it started picking up, and people started hiring me because they wanted the look. Certain photographers didn't want that overdone look. They wanted my style. So I always tried to work with people that understood my aesthetic.
Okay. Can you tell me about, I know you started with your 10 lipsticks, but how did it start? So you thought you want a new color, and then what?
Well, I was always fixing the makeup that was in my kit. I couldn't afford a lot of makeup back then. I would buy all these different things, and I'd buy things from the health food store. I'd buy things from the department store, and I could never get the foundation to match the skin. I could never get blush that didn't have to be blended. And I would lipstick. I hated the the look and the feel of overdone lipstick. So I used to mix and blend a taupe eye pencil, a little bit of a pinky blush, and a little Vaseline to make a lip that looked like my lip color. And one day I was at a shoot and I met a chemist, and he had made this range of lip gloss for the drug store he was at. And I told him I had an idea. I wanted to make lipstick that looked like people's lips. And he made it for me.
And how was it to sell it then? Because people weren't looking for the natural lipstick.
Well, I never thought I would have a cosmetics line. I just made these lipsticks and I thought, wow, people would like these. I bet the models would like them. I bet my friends would like them. So I started making them with him and selling them out of my house. And I learned, because I was a makeup artist, that all of us women have different color lips. It's not even
Yeah.
about skin color, it's your different lips. You could be a woman of color and have clear pink lips. you could be a white woman and have really dark lips. So you've got to find a lipstick that actually looks like your lip color. And discovered that early on. And I made a range of 10 lipsticks, started selling them out of my house. And then about a year later, and I was a working makeup artist. I had just had my first baby. I was commuting to New York, and I was at a party, and I met this woman, and I said, "What do you do?" She said, "I'm a cosmetics buyer at Bergdorf Goodman." I said, "Oh, I have a line of lipstick." And that's how I got into Bergdorf Goodman. And I'm not kidding.
And how did you decide then to, like, this was the time now to sell and then go work with a corporate when you had started something on your own?
I just never thought of not doing it. I thought, wow, this is so interesting. This is so cool. This is I never even said things like, this is a great opportunity. That was not what my mind was. I just thought, oh, this makes sense. Here's this fancy department store that I couldn't afford to shop in at the time, by the way. And to be able to sell the lipsticks was so awesome. I never thought about next steps. I just,
Yeah, no, go ahead. Sorry, finish.
No. I did it. We opened, we thought we'd sell 100 the first month. We sold 100 the first day. So buzz started happening. I didn't know what buzz was. I didn't know what PR was. I didn't know what marketing was, but it all just started happening. And then after a few months, people said, well, I love this lipstick. I need lip pencils. And I'm like, oh, pencils. Now I got to find out where to do those. And that's how the company started.
And then how did you, I guess when you started with your chemist with the 10 colors, is it the same chemist now making your lip pencils too? Or how did that move from there?
No, I learned very early on that this great chemist that helped me create these lipsticks was wonderful. But if I needed to scale and to work on the price point and work on the profit and work on everything, I needed a different model. Like our original partnership, he made the lipsticks. We sold them for $15 and we each got $7.50. So I have no idea what it cost us to make. I don't know anything. It was time to get a little more professional when I got into Bergdorf Goodman.
And then you also mentioned when you first started off, you were a young mom. This was something you started almost as a hobby and a passion. Tell me a little bit about that.
God, it's so crazy. I remember being pregnant with my son, who's now 30 years old. And I had just started, this idea for the lipsticks. I somehow did this before he was born. So when he was born, I'd be on the phone from my suburban home in New Jersey, and no one admitted they lived in the suburbs back then in the fashion industry. And I'd be on the phone talking to editors, telling them about this makeup and giving them tips. And my son would be either crying or throwing up on me. And, back then luckily there was no Zoom or no pictures. It was very comical, me talking about how this is how I fix my makeup and these are the tips. And here's this baby, hanging on me. And, somehow it worked. And, it wasn't easy. Anyone that has young kids know that. I have 3 sons. So during the different parts of my career, I had babies.
Yeah. And then, sorry, go ahead. I keep cutting you, Bobbi.
No. All I was saying is thank goodness, because I love being a mom even more than I love being an entrepreneur.
And then did you start this with somebody? So when you came up with the lipstick idea, initially it was with the chemist where you shared profits, but what happened after that?
Well, I'm really lucky because my husband is an amazing businessman. And, I am an entrepreneur, but I'm creative. I'm a visionary, but I'm not a business person. So lucky for me, I had someone that was able to do things that I was not capable of. So I started with my husband. We somehow decided to form a partnership with another couple. She worked at a big PR agency and he was already in cosmetics. So we formed a partnership, and that's how we launched Bobbi Brown Professional Cosmetics is what it was called in the beginning.
And then you kept the name Bobbi Brown, but then you sold the company.
Yes. We sold the company. I can barely believe it was that quick, but 4.5 years after we founded it, and we sold it to Estee Lauder.
Yeah.
And I stayed an employee for 22 years.
Yeah. And what was that like being suddenly now you have your own company, you running the show, and then now 20 years in a corporate scenario? What was that like?
Well, it's like landing on the moon or Mars. I was a creative makeup artist working in photo studios that commuted home to my baby and then my second baby, and all of a sudden I had to go to a fancy building with corporate people sitting in these meetings. I had never been in a professional corporate situation before, so it was a little deer in the headlights, but
Yeah.
in the beginning it worked really well. They all thought I was interesting. I'm not I was brilliant. They thought I was interesting. And, I certainly had my early supporters there, and I was able to really lead and push the company where I believed it needed to go. I would say for 20 of the years, 20 to 21, and the last year or so was like pushing a horse up a hill. It was not easy.
Yeah.
And so I left.
Yeah, so Bobby, yeah, I realize now that you don't associate with the Bobby Brown brand anymore, even though it has your name. So, how was that an easy decision? Tell me a little bit about that decision. So you're with the company now for 20 plus years. How do you know it's the right time to move out of that?
Well, you can imagine I complained a lot, people in my circle. And one day I was walking in Colorado, and my Aunt Alice, who's 89 years old, she said to me, "Bobbi, it's time. Every time I talk to you, all I do is hear you complain and you tell me you think you could fix it. I don't think you could fix this." And she's the most optimistic person I know. And I said, "You're right." And then that October, I left, and it was a hard decision. It wasn't easy, and it was a very interesting transition.
Yeah. And then, Bobby, I'm thinking about this. You have $1 billion empire, Bobby Brown. You leave that, you are 60 plus, and now you're starting out on like more entrepreneurs. So that's why I called you a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Is this the right time?
Well, funny, when I left my birthday's in April, so when I left the company in October, I was 59.
Okay.
So how many women at 59 years old, they retire,
Yeah.
I had no idea if I was going to start a new company. I didn't know anything. When I left the brand, it was a very good gift. I had my 9th book to promote, which is called Beauty from the Inside Out. So that allowed me to spend 6 or 8 months going on talk shows, doing Google Talks, doing all these new things that when I was, busy at Bobbi Brown Cosmetics, I wasn't able to do. I've been fascinated by younger people, the new world, different ways to reach people. And I had an opportunity to podcast and to do everything. I was the first person that did a blog when no one knew what a blog was. I was on a beauty editor of the Today Show, the first chance I was able to push myself to. And, I was the editor-in-chief of Yahoo Beauty, creating a beauty magazine. So I'm someone that likes to do things that I have no idea how to do and just figure it out. And so leaving the company, I realized there's no one to tell me no. There's no one to say, you can't do this. So I just continued to do what I do, which is to reach out, talk to people, meet new people. It was so much fun. I hadn't had lunch with people in, 10 years. It was for no reason. It was really fun.
And Bobby, I know whenever I read about you or I hear about you, I notice a lot of your success is just from being nice to people or connecting with people or talking to people. I know I read about how you became a beauty editor at the Today Show. Would you mind sharing that story? That's another example of just connecting with people, which I really like.
Yeah, well, I am a people person, and I was promoting my first makeup book, and it was my last visit to a department store. I was at Neiman Marcus in Florida, and after I finished my talk, no one was listening to me. I'll never forget it. I kept getting the forks and the knife, And someone had a question. I walked back to the room. There was a woman, she must have been 4'10". And she said, you're terrific. She's asked me a makeup question. I answered her. And she said, I've seen you on the Today Show. I had been on once. And I said, yeah, I love the Today Show. She said, if you could do anything that you'd want to do that you haven't done, what would you like to do? And it popped in my head. I said, I'd like to be the beauty editor of the Today Show. She said, honey, Jeff Zucker, who was the executive assistant, was her grandson. She said, I'm going to call Jeff. And that Monday, I became the beauty editor of the Today Show. For 14 years, yes.
I love that story when I heard it. So I had to make sure people listening today got a chance to hear that too if they hadn't. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Bobbi, I read about your updates, and I know you strongly believe in supporting other women, empowering other women. What advice do you have for your listeners here, men and women listening to you, on how we in our corporate world here support other women? What should we be doing?
Well, you should be doing everything that hopefully your parents taught you to do and taught you to be, which is be kind, be someone that listens, because it's not, when I was growing up, we were taught be nice to everyone because you never know who you're going to meet on the way down. And you know what? That's not the right information. It's be nice to everyone because you never know what people are going through. So I think that, I'd like to tell everybody in the world right now, it's a tough time right now, just be kind and care and ask questions. And you never know what's going to come out of it, a friendship or someone knows someone, not because you're looking for it, but because if you're nice and kind and open, and guess what? How good does it feel to give someone like random acts of kindness? Some people might be going through something really badly, and you could be the person that basically says, sorry, that's my dog. Biggie. Good girl. I'm fine. Yeah. Little dog walks by. But you want to just make sure that you're nice to people because it's human kindness. And you get a lot more back in life if you are kind to other people and they're kind to you.
And this resonates, Bobbi, also through your other philosophy around beauty as a whole. And that's what you're doing now. So you're a wellness entrepreneur. And can you talk a little bit about Evolution 18 and your new products?
Sure. After I left the brand, I promoted Beauty from the Inside Out, the book I'm most proud of. I actually went back to school and got my degree as a health coach from Institute of Integrative Nutrition. And it just really led me on, this path that is, by the way, it's been my passion. I always thought I could look better, but now I think I could feel better. And it's not just about age. And there's so many things that we go through that if we just pay attention and make changes, you will feel a lot better. So when I was promoting the book, I met, QVC called and said, what would you like to sell? We'd like you to sell anything you want. And I was like, I don't know shoes. I don't know. I couldn't figure it out. And I said, you know what? I really care about wellness. I think I could create a wellness brand. And they said, all right, great, go create one. And I met a chemist who has a manufacturing site, and I created Evolution 18, which are supplements. And I say that because you can't follow an unhealthy diet, take a supplement and think you're going to feel good. And so a lot of the products are anything that will help your skin, your nails, your hair, and your gut, all things that we go through. There's a vanilla collagen, which is my favorite, that has hyaluronic acid and magnesium that calms you down, but also gets into your joints and muscles and is good for your skin and tastes really good and good ingredients. So I really love being part of this wellness world. And I think a lot of people out there have to really understand it's not as much about how you look, but it's about how you feel. And if you feel good, you look better.
If there were only 3 things that I would want to change tomorrow, or anybody listening to you, what would be that 3 things of advice from you?
I would say, first of all, know that anything that takes time is going to work. There's nothing quick. You could start any cleanse, any crazy diet. I guarantee in 2 weeks, you're not going to be on it. So it's the small steps. So the little change is the first one is make sure you drink enough water. I cannot, press that enough. I try to drink, and I've been not very good this week, 8 glasses a day. Sometimes I put, something in it so it tastes better, but night and day if you're drinking the water. So hydrate, number one. Number two, increase how many vegetables and plants you eat. So things that grow in the ground are so good for you. Things that are made in a plant, not so good for you. So try to eat as many things that grow in the ground. Number three is just to move your body. I'm not saying go take kickboxing or do something strenuous. Go do something. You could walk, you could do yoga classes, there's even 10-minute Peloton strength classes. There's things that you could fit into your life. So those are the three things, and just to make them part of your habits.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And then, Bobbi, what advice would you have for somebody who's listening to you and comes to you? I'm sure a lot of people do. I want to start a new company. I don't know if I have the financial bandwidth for it, or where do I begin? Do I go looking for a co-founder? Do I look for funding? How do I even know if it's the right idea that I should be investing money or time in?
Well, first of all, when people call me up or come to me or stop me and say, I have a question, I say, okay. And they say, I want to start my own company. And I say, okay. And that's the end of the conversation. You don't just start your own company. You have an idea. And what is your idea? And whatever idea you have to make sure it could come to fruition. If it's a product, you can't tell someone about the idea. You have to show them the product. And I think it makes no sense for someone to invest and ask people to lend them money to create something that they don't know is actually going to work. So there's ways to get products made to show someone. There are certainly ways to ask people in your network if they like your idea, if they like the products. So you have to do your market research. That doesn't mean you have to hire a market research firm. You have to ask around. And if you do have something, test it before you go big scale, test it. And sometimes this is your side hustle. You need your job because you have to pay your rent. So you have to be practical. And with social media, you don't need to hire big PR agencies. You could do things yourself until you need to scale. But you only need to scale when you have something that you know is scalable.
Okay. And then, Bobbi, what advice would you have for parents? And maybe I'm being a little selfish here with a teenager daughter at home, on how do I make sure I'm teaching her beauty in the right way, in the way you think about it, which I personally think is the right way. It's just not external, but a whole beauty.
Well, I am a mother of 3 sons. I've written 2 books for teenage girls. So I've done my homework. I honestly, I could say now that my kids are 30, 28, and 22. Most of the things that they have learned, I didn't necessarily teach them, but they actually watched. So they learn a lot by observing. So certainly, I would say make sure your daughter is a good person. Make sure she has very good health and wellness and hygiene habits, which I'm sure you have taught her that. And make sure, she knows how to understand passion. Because I think a lot of kids are so pushed by their parents to get ahead. But you know what? You don't want to spend, 10 years in a job that you're not happy with. So there's a way to figure out how to make money with your passion.
Okay, thank you. I could keep going on, but I know there are some great questions here coming in via the comments, so I'm going to turn to them. Oh, where do I begin? I'm going to scroll up a little bit to make sure nothing gets dropped here. Krista, there's a question here from Krista. Krista wants to know, what was the experience teaching a course in masterclass? What did you learn about yourself and your company through the process and aftermath of the release?
Oh my God, it was one of the most epic things I have ever done in my entire career. I have never seen a better, bigger infrastructure than Masterclass. so dedicated, so, just so involved. And I literally poured everything in my heart out there. And we spent 5 days in a studio in Montclair, New Jersey, where I live, shooting it. Didn't know what, I just had to literally give it up and trust the process, because you don't know what's going to happen. And it was very intense seeing the first dailies you could imagine. But I'm so proud that I was the first and the only beauty makeup artist to teach the course. And, hopefully it'll be a gift for my grandchildren to have it on film. And I still get really great comments on my social media. So I know people have learned a lot. It was an amazing experience. And what no one really knows is the day before I started Masterclass, we hosted a family of 20 people from the Bahamas that lost their house in the hurricane and didn't know them. And they arrived at my house the night before. It was an intense week.
There's another question here from Stephanie. She says, longtime fan of your lips. Actually, the first lipstick she's saying was Ruby 10. Do you remember that, Bobbi?
I do.
Okay, and she wants to know how the company is changing with the rise of tech in beauty and makeup.
Well, I can't really talk about...
I was going to say not the company, so maybe just the makeup industry.
Right, yeah. I mean, I've not been involved in anything Bobbi Brown in 4 years, but I think that there have been so many changes since I launched the company, for sure. And I just remember when YouTube, kind of came on, and all these influencers, we didn't even know what an influencer was then, started doing makeup tutorials, and they didn't have to be experts. They just happened to be passionate makeup artists showing different things. It was a little overwhelming when it first happened. And, certainly most of the makeup on YouTube were things that were not my aesthetic. But, I experimented and tried to hop in that. And certainly there's so much technology that, is infiltrated the makeup industry. I don't really understand all of them. I don't understand how you can go and put your colors on and all of a sudden there's a photo of you and the colors are on your face. It always seems not authentic and not real to me, but I know a lot of companies do use it.
Okay. There's a question here from Titania. She's saying, thinking about the life of your company from launch till now, is there anything in particular that you would have done differently looking back? That was going to be one of my questions too, so I'm glad you've covered it. Thank you.
Well, I mean, which company? I've done so many different things.
That's true.
If it was the beauty company, I'm not part of it, but yes, I could easily, which I'm not going to even spend my time doing, I could easily go back and tell you the different things I would have done differently, but I wasn't in charge, which is one of the reasons I left. And certainly my wellness brand, we launched Evolution 18 with literally 3 people. And now I think we might have 8. We are, again, self-funded. I wouldn't change anything, but I probably would have done a few things differently. I would have gone even a little slower in the beginning, launching products, because there were some products that I wasn't really proud of that we are slowly, getting rid of.
Yeah. Okay, the next question is from Amanda. She wants to know, what do you see as the biggest opportunities in the beauty industry for making it inclusive? And how do you think Google can help drive that change?
Well, there's so many, opportunities. There are so many new cosmetics brands out there, very small indie brands, and a lot of women of color are creating these beautiful brands. I'm helping a few founders with, their companies. And I think that, I think this is a great time for people to start new brands and to be able to reach not just women of color, but women, the global woman is all colors. So I think that, it's because of the internet, we we know so much and we see so much that it's very easy for me to understand the different needs of the different markets.
Okay. There's a question here from Phoebe. Phoebe says, your masterclass was really helpful for me as a trans woman. Have you considered doing a special YouTube episode or mini series for makeup tips to help specific challenges to trans women?
Well, I have not thought of it, but I think it's a really great idea. And excuse me one second. Green tea. And I don't have a YouTube channel right now. I'm starting to do I'm starting to do makeup on Instagram lives because I can't really touch people right now. And that's frustrating. So I'm looking forward to when I can go back into a studio and actually safely do makeup. But I will remember your request. So hopefully I will do.
Yeah, I've seen some of those, Bobbi. Those are definitely very helpful. There's a question from Farah. She wants to know, as an icon in the beauty business, what emerging brands have caught your eye?
What emerging brands? Well, I'm such a big fan of Glossier. I know Emily, the founder, and what she's done has really disrupted my industry, the classic industry, the old-fashioned industry, however it is. And I think there's, these great even retail sites that are opening up, from Cult Beauty in the UK to Violet Grey, that are starting to really, give awareness to the younger brands. So I'm excited about all the changes that are happening, and I welcome, more entrepreneurs and their brands to launch.
Okay. Question from Yinda. Yinda wants to know, what are your top 3 must-have beauty products?
Well, I always say everyone's different. For me personally, I always need a moisturizer. I've had dry skin my whole life. So I find a moisturizer or an oil on my face makes all the difference in the world. And then I also could use a little concealer if I'm, not wearing my glasses. And I'm all about a blush. Like, I like less products, but use them in different ways. So I'll take a blush, put it on my cheeks and my lips, a cream, and I will use a brown pencil to line my brows, line my eyes. And if I have to touch up in between, salon visits, that helps too. So, and mascara. I don't use a lot of makeup. I think I look better the less makeup I wear.
On that similar note, how important is makeup for women? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think makeup is such a gift because not when it's used to cover up, not when it's used to drastically transform, but honestly what it does and how it makes you feel. Sometimes I know the difference if I, spend most of the day without makeup and I just make a little bit of effort, as we get older, especially a brunette. I never had a problem with, with loss of definition in my face. And as I get older, if I don't put mascara on and fill in my brows, I feel like I disappear. And I know blondes always have that issue, so I'm sensitive to that. But I think that makeup is just so important because it could instantly make you feel something. And usually that's better. That's the point of it.
Okay. And I think maybe Krishna's question here is related too, so I'll pick that up here. Beauty is about the individual. How should we champion all different interpretations of beauty? What are small steps we can take to expand our definitions of what traditionally beautiful means?
Well, when I was growing up, if you didn't look like Cheryl Tiegs or Christy Brinkley or Barbie, you were not attractive. So it took me a while to understand my unique beauty that I thought was unique. And I always say the actress Ali McGraw, when she was a young actress, she had dark hair, big eyebrows, very natural looks. And that's when I realized I could be pretty too. So the important thing for me is whatever you look like, find someone that looks like you, that you admire. Don't admire someone that you just can never end up looking like. Really find someone that looks similar to you.
Okay. Oh, yeah, this is a great question from Rachel. Rachel wants to know, have you pushed through any self-doubt in your life and career?
Of course, the question is how. So a lot of times, many times, I find it really important to have a support group. My girlfriends, my husband, my posse at work, my Aunt Alice, my dad, my sister. I mean, there's people I can call for different things. And when I first left the company, you could imagine there was a lot of self-doubt. being an entrepreneur, you either get like, oh my God, this is going to be so great, or you get, oh my God, this is going to be terrible. So I've been able to really, use my my network around my life. And if all that fails, I found myself a life coach after I left the brand, which is different than a psychiatrist or a psychologist. It wasn't about me talking about, when I was a little girl, they did this to me. It was more what I'm going through now and what I need to overcome. And my life coach would give me assignments to do for next week. And that was really helpful for me to not feel stuck, not be in a rut. And don't be afraid to ask for help. We all go through it.
And then, Bobbi, through your journey, when you were trying to figure out the makeup industry, learn a little bit more about beauty when you were new to it, were there mentors or people that you looked up to?
There was people I admired and people that I aspired to be. And I'd reach out. I never had a very tight, close person, as a makeup artist. I had many different ones, but I also had a lot of people that told me it would probably not work, that, I'll probably not be a good makeup artist. I had one person tell me I didn't have a style that people would remember. I had other people tell me that my makeup was too natural and no one wants to look like that. And, I've always kind of just felt bad for a second and then, shook myself off and gone on. So I've had business mentors, and one of my biggest one is a guy named Mickey Drexler, who was the CEO of J. Crew until he left. And he's one of my besties, and he's been a really big mentor to me.
Okay. There's a question from Nandita. She wants to know, she said she was listening to your podcast and you mentioned you're 5'2". She's saying, being a petite woman myself, it's sometimes hard for me to be assertive. How do you overcome that in your career?
Well, I got to be honest. I wish I was 5'2". I'm 5 foot, 5'0". So, which is why I wear, these cute little shoes, because I do like a little bit of a lift. But, I do think that because I'm small, it has allowed me to be tougher. I don't have a choice. I think it just gave me that extra bit of, I've got to work a little harder. I assume it's because I'm not the tall person that walks in the room.
Yeah. Bobbi, I know it's almost time and we're going to be wrapping up soon. Is there any closing remarks, advice, thoughts, anything that you'd like to share with everyone listening to you today?
Well, just that I'm pretty in awe of, all of you guys and what you do, because you guys are the future. And, I'm someone that loves to talk to and to certainly hear your stories and how you got to where you are, because I find that, our world is so big and diverse, and I think it's so interesting. And I just think that, I hope that everyone out there realizes that you're on different parts of your journey, but there's always so many places to go and so many things to do. I think of my dad, who's 85 years old, who is a children's book author now, just took up boxing. And, I'm 63 years old, and I am not nearly done. I know I have other opportunities, other things I want to do out there, because I don't play golf, I don't play tennis, and I don't like to go to the theater. So I have no choice but to start businesses.
Okay, Bobbi, I'm going to take one more quick question then. What are you working on now, or what's next?
Well, I am coming up with a new season of my podcast called Beyond the Beauty. It's my second podcast. The first one was with VaynerMedia, and this one's with iHeart. And I'm going to be focusing more on beauty and just talking to beauty entrepreneurs. And that's been really fun. And I'm just, working on Evolution 18. We're looking for a general manager of F18, and, working on a few other projects. So I'm not bored. I am not bored.
Yeah. Okay. Bobbi, thank you so much. Thank you again for your time here. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, you too. It was a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye-bye.